The mature simmer here. It's go time. I love the sound of a harvester in the morning. Let's go. Yeah, parking too close to that shed sometimes, but it's alright. Turn on some lights. It's still a little dark. So I know that's going to make it less fun to watch. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to throw in some time lapse until the sun starts to come up, and then I'll chat with you guys at that point.
There's nobody else better than me around. You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now. I'm like a diamond, can't stop me from shining.
Alright, so welcome to daylight. I'm having a little bit of a challenge climbing this hill, which is normal for this field. It's kind of how I inherited this, so I think when they squared this off, obviously there was a bit of a challenge in how the field had to be raised above the ground, and so let's see if putting the differential lock helps at all. It does not. I know I've harvested this before, so I don't understand the difficulty here. I was going to say I lift and drop the header, and that worked, and we don't have any left. Alright. I wasn't sure if it was going to catch part of the next field, which if it was, I would go ahead and let it do its thing. But it's not, so I'll just kind of manually drive this down and finish up field 29 here. So if you recall, we started really close to 6 a.m. on this field, and we're coming up on 8, so true to form, a couple hours, which once again, you know, for those of you who haven't seen it, I've talked about my work time calculation, and you might want to look into that if you want to figure out, how do I figure out if I can afford or able to buy a piece of land, if I'm going to be able to work it, and what it's going to take, because then you can plug in your implements, or if you're buying an implement, you can plug in, hey, do I want this one or that one? So I use it for various purposes like that, and you know, I've got the card up above that you can take a look at. If you, within that video, I talk about the work time calculator that exists in the spreadsheet that's attached to it. So anyway, certainly by the time if we have to run the truck up, which I think this may fill the truck. Well, it won't here, but we'll definitely, you know, we'll just start on 29 right away, and certainly we'll obviously have that filling up the truck at some point then. But if we had to take the truck up, yeah, we definitely would be right up till 8 and then take the full amount of time. At some point here coming up, I'm going to have to take another break, run some errands in real life, and get some things done, and then try to come back. But obviously, I'd like to get this coffee off the field today. That's certainly my goal. Just obviously going to take a long time. So you may have been keeping track in the time lapse and seen, contrary to the canola, where we got 2 full trucks and then partially a third, we are already on our 4th truck at this point, and we just have 1 field done. So as I've mentioned, you know, different crops yield very differently, and if you've played Farming Simulator, you know that, but for those who might be newer, or if you've not played, you know, a multi-fruit type situation beyond base game, because coffee is not in base game, you may not have been exposed to this crop, for example. So we're likely getting like 300,000 off of that other field. Now this one is a little smaller because we have the housing notch taken out of it that we're going to cut the headland on when we get down there, although I think we might be full before we get there. But so this may be a little bit less. I think 89's a little bit smaller. I think it's 25 acres instead of 30. And once again, 97 with the notches in the center is around 25, I believe, is the measure But then, I added the cutout of the forest up above, which obviously would, cover spaces like, maybe the driveway that is cut out suddenly has crop. Because then in the field measure, in the additional info add-on that we had that gave me that, it doesn't take into account when you add and plowing additional acreage. It doesn't add that in, I've noticed. So it seems to be that however the map is designed is what it's reporting as the acres for the field. So honestly, I don't know, I guess, on any of these fields if they've been modified by other FMs who owned them in the past on the server and expanded. I wouldn't know that because I've not played Hilly Seneca directly and or compared the fields, so I do not know what we're looking at. But the short story is, what I am starting to contemplate as a possible reality is we may have a silo capacity problem, which is a good problem to have. It's always good when the thing that makes you money, crops, you have so much of it that you need to spend a little money to store more of it so that you can make even more money. So if that happens, we'll expand the silo more than likely. I mean, the other option I have is I can, try to decide what I'm going to be doing with this coffee. If I'm selling it in any way, or even if I'm not, I could always sell off just a little bit to not have to expand the silo. But at this point, money's not the problem, so my guess is I'll just expand it. But I'll make that decision as I get closer. I've got probably 6 hours to think about it at least of gameplay. And then, given the real life interruptions I'm going to have in between, more time than that to think about it. So I don't think we're quite going to fill this truck up, so we're going to be running around a little bit longer and do one more combine load before we run this thing up, I'm pretty sure. But let's see where we get. Oh, maybe we will be full. Yep, oh, we actually are. Alright, so we'll take this truck up. So, you've got the fall colors here on Hilly Seneca as we're right in mid-autumn. So we've technically got 2 more days that we can harvest, but the challenge becomes the ability to harvest. I don't think we have any rain in the forecast, at least for tomorrow, from what I recall. I didn't look into winter 1. But dew becomes a very real possibility on this map in the mornings. So, which then means the crops are too wet to harvest, and I can't do things. So once again, if I'm unable to get on, if it dries later in the day, I may still miss a window. Or we might have the situation as we did when we lost our cotton and tobacco, where I was able to get on and check throughout the day, but it never actually dried enough throughout the day in winter 1 to get to the point where I could ever harvest. So that's a long way of explaining. That's why I'm going to do everything I can to get this coffee off the fields today, because I'm in jeopardy of not being able to get it off the fields at all if I don't do that. So, which is also why I was hoping it was going to pop yesterday. But it worked out. I mean, we still got some harvesting done, and we did make 250,000. That was actually what I did get from the contracts. I thought it was about 260, but when I actually got paid out this morning and I was moving it or trying to contemplate what I was going to do with it, it was 250,000. So speaking of that, just so you're aware where we're at on that, I have decided you know, obviously we've gone down from when I started showing you guys Misty Hills here. We've gone down from almost 700,000 in our bank balance in game to 300. And no real reason not to go ahead and assume I'm going to be here for a while. We'll talk about that in a second. But short story is I've decided, and I put in the funds transfer for $1 million to get moved from web into game. So we're going to see that balance at some point jump up by $1 million. You know, assuming we don't do anything in game. I mean, I think it's unlikely that I'm going to suddenly decide I'm selling my coffee in game because that's the best price I can get. But, you know, if we did that and suddenly, you know, we had a lot more, you're going to see a increase of $1 million at some point that is going to seemingly come out of nowhere, but where it's coming is from that. So we're moving $1 million in. So addressing then, like, well, why? Because at this point we sit just slightly over a week away from the release of FS22. And while I will certainly be doing things with FS22, likely things that will appear as videos on the Mature Simmer, those are going to be in single player. On the FSN side, we, meaning myself and the other farm managers on this server, we've talked about it and we've decided we're not going to move immediately or as quickly as we can within FSN to FS22. And so there's, you know, a lot of reasons for that, probably the same reasons that we're going to all experience to some degree even in the single player game, but there's certainly things that are FSN related. Obviously we talked about we want a map that we want to use, and it's possible we'll look at one of the 3 that come with the game and all of us will suddenly come to the realization, yeah, this might actually be one that we just like to use within FSN. You know, and in that case, we could have then gone ahead and been part of the initial run of servers. The other thing is, you know, there's likely going to be bugs. There's things that aren't going to quite work. You know, there could be things that cause the servers to crash because of that. It could be very disruptive to be playing FS22 immediately. And so rather than add to the challenges that we already have with being on FSN to being able to be successful amongst all the responsibilities of real life and so forth, we've decided we'll just wait and we'll move at some point in the future. And we don't know when that future is going to be, but the short story on that, which is what ties to the decision to transfer that much money here into FS19, is we're 60 to 90 days out at best before we'd be considering a move to an FS22 server within FSN. So in that case, yeah, I don't think the 300,000 is going to get me there, because that's going to be, I guess I could have done this math ahead of time, but quickly thinking about it, I mean, it's going to be at least 5 in-game years, because that would be 60 days. You know, but if we go to 90 days, you know, we're talking 7.5, 8 years that we'd be in-game. And we're going to have to resupply during that time, unless I substantially slow down, which is a possibility. I mean, I may decide, hey, I really want to spend most of my time on FS22, and then obviously you'll be seeing whatever comes of that on the channel. And I may then decide I'm going to do the bare minimum in FSN, and so I'm going to plant a field or 2. I'm going to leave the others just kind of sitting around and wait until, you know, we're ready to really go full guns a-blazing within FSN on FS22 before I focus heavily on FSN again. That may be a decision I end up making depending on how much FS22 grabs me over FS19. But if you've seen, my video on my FS22 opinions, I'm not sure. I mean, other than a few things like production chains and so forth, like right now there isn't this list of 20 things that are compelling to me that are like, these are game changers in FS22. There's 2 or 3 things that, are probably going to be pretty substantial, but are they going to be substantial enough to get me to say, all right, I want to do nothing but FS22? Right now I don't think so. So I'm thinking this is still going to be the majority of my time after a period, and over those 60 to 90 days that I'll basically be doing what I'm doing here the majority of the time. So that's not to say that, the first 2 weeks, maybe the first month after FS22 comes out, that there won't be a downtick here, because I decide, I really want to immerse myself in that and just experience that and get to know it well, and then come back. But irregardless of that, we're looking at 2 to 3 months at a minimum before we do anything here in FSN with FS22. And so that's why I decided, I was actually at the point with the 250,000 where, I've already got money spread around 4 banks because of the $1 million interest limit. I was literally at the point where I was going to have to start seeking out a 5th bank to put my funds in, because the 250,000 that I had gotten from the cotton and tobacco harvest had taken me over $1 million in any of the banks. So I would have needed to start splitting my funds again. And so instead I said, I'll just move money in game, and again, I could have just moved 250,000 and solved my immediate problem, but I went ahead and said, nah, I'm going to be in here on this server for many months, so let's get some substantial money in here. And funds transfers, just like anything else in FSN, 24 to 72 hours. So that's the other piece of, if I did 250,000 and then suddenly said, I'll move some more, I'm just waiting 2-3 days at least for funds to show up, and it's more work for operations for literally no reason. So doing it once, in my mind, is preferable. Alright, so we obviously took that truck up, which means we've got 320,000 up in the silo. The silo capacity up there is 1.2 million. So as I said, we might end up, as I think we did the 1 year, I think we thought we also might have had to expand the silo, and I came in just under it. That may still be what we see, but I don't know that I've ever gotten 300,000 of anything off of one field at Misty Hills here. So I'm thinking this may be the winner in ultimate yield, and may actually tip us to add another extension to the silo, which I think they come in 100,000 capacities. So we go 1.2 to 1.3, and obviously if we needed to go a little further we could. But alright, so while Swede's joining up here, I think that's all I've had to say. Just wanted to wait to talk to you till it was daylight, so at least you had something to watch while I talked. And we'll jump back into time lapse.
There's nobody else better than me around. You know I'm the type to stand out in a crowd. You might be jealous, but I can't help it now.
here, just emptying out into the truck, thinking we're going to have maybe one more full harvester, maybe not, because that next row is not a full row that we have left, but we'll see what we can do and what we'll get out of it. So we didn't exceed the capacity of the silo. I think we're going to be okay. We're going to be close to 1.1 million, I believe, because I think we're at 1,040,000 right now. You'll have seen it with the truck count that was popping up during the time lapse. You'll also see it's now 16:30, which translates into 4:30. We started this at 6 a.m. today. Definitely there were some breaks here and there, so I haven't been operating consistently during that time, but it's still been 6 to 8 hours as it normally is, because the harvester moves at 6 miles an hour regardless of what crop's in the ground. So yeah, the biggest thing, and why I came out of time lapse a little bit early, because I think I just want to have the conversation and give you guys the information before I end, rather than taking more time after the end of the harvest, because at this point I'm likely done for today. I mean, it's been a long time that I've been driving around at the computer and moving this harvest along, so I need to go do some other things. Obviously I'm going to clean up the farm later, but I'm not going to include that on this video. The harvest videos are long enough as it is. But the most important thing to consider is, one of the things I've been looking at that I always consider in FSN is the crop rotation. With seasons, that becomes important. So you'll get yields and so forth that will change. So I was testing things like tobacco, hemp, and cotton, because I'd like to grow those regularly. And you can see here, as long as I rotate a cereal in between, whoops, that's not what I wanted to do. As long as we rotate a cereal in between, then I can get a really good yield off the field. Otherwise, it's the same issue. Like if you plant the same crop over and over on the same field, your yield drops, and ultimately I think you get a yield of like 0.86 on all crops, is kind of how seasons works. Is you'll eventually get kind of 86% of what a full yield would be. So if I pull that up, now that I'm not running to the end of the field, which is what caused me to panic a little bit and switch, you can see I'm going to get 1.14 yield, which is similar to what I was doing when I was doing things like rye and poppy. And coffee, while it's high yielding, does tend to go down, but as long as you rotate cereal crops in between, it seems to replenish the soil and let it yield pretty well. So while we didn't exceed our capacity here, I think next harvest we will. So we'll be looking at what that means to our silo complex or our process. And that may change year to year as I make different decisions based on what we're putting down and so forth. Because at this point, even on the cotton and the tobacco field that we had this harvest, I'm basically going to blanket all my fields with cereal crop to kind of replenish them at this point. And then, I'll make a decision of, once again, am I going to put coffee down and then cotton and, well, it'll be cotton and hemp, because that's what I put the storage sheds as. But then the decision will be, am I going to sell the cotton and hemp each time, or am I just going to let them sit there and basically have like a massive payday at one point? Because I'm talking and I'm not paying attention, and I'm sure you've noticed all kinds of those in the game, or in the time lapse that you saw, which was also in the game. But so yeah, most of the FMs have been on today, as you might imagine, with harvest. So Swede's back on across the street. He had been on, he dropped off. Oh, I don't even have my pipe out, but I'll try to guess where that's going to come out to, and put my truck there, and hopefully I'll be right and I won't have to move. So I think this will get us there, but we'll find out. So just trying to pick this. There we go. Alright. And if nothing else, I should be able to move the pipe back, but nope, that worked. So, as you might imagine, you get pretty good at understanding the positioning of everything as you play with the same equipment, work the same fields. So, it's definitely helpful from that regard. I know, it may be less appealing as a video series on YouTube, but it's what I spend the majority of my time doing, and certainly I've shared with folks that the FSN experience is unique amongst Farming Simulator, and that's one of the reasons I felt compelled to share that with everybody, is I think there will be a group of people that is interested in just following year to year what's going on with us, and maybe even transitioning with us to FS22 at some point. I'm hoping. It seems like we've got a pretty good, steady group of FMs on the server at this point, so I'm hoping people will be sticking around for a while. We've got several that are into their 4th or 5th year on the server, so we've got some longevity already. You can see Swede's got his thing. He's using his loading wagon to pick up grass over there across the street. So he's moving around, I'm moving around. It's just, at this point, we're all so busy with our fields that it takes almost every ounce of time we have. Unfortunately, we have less ability to help each other like, Sears did on that one video, because things just tend not to stagger out enough in a cold geo. I think if we were on a warm geo, that might change, and maybe that's what we'll look at for FS22, is look for a map in a warm area, but I'm not quite sure it's going to give us the layout we want, because the only thing I can think of is, I think they did put Wild West on a warm geo in FSN. Basing it on, I'm not sure which area of the West, but they did do that, and but then it was like Don Diego and Pineapple Bay, I think, are the only two that I've played in FSN that are on a warm geo, and they're just very challenging roads and fields, and not anywhere near kind of what I enjoy seeing. Like I do like the seasons, especially fall, like this time of year when the trees, obviously are all different colors, and some of that I'm sure is simply because that's what I actually live in reality now as well. But either way, not sure where we'll end up. But so the short story is, yeah, we're going to plant cereal next year, some cereal crop, and I'm thinking it's going to be oats, just because it pays well, it yields pretty well. And I've got a little remnant. I've got like 20,000 in my silo here of that as well, so it would just kind of make sense to have a shot of clearing that out when I sell it, and then we'll rotate back with cotton and hemp probably on the other fields every other year, and then cereal crops, which is kind of what I've been doing, and that's just the nature of when you're operating with seasons, what happens. So yeah, we're at 109. You can see it on the silo display there. There we go. So just over 1.1 million. So not a bad harvest of coffee. Not sure what that's going to turn into as far as cash and what I'm going to do, but I'll make those decisions probably between today and tomorrow and determine what we're going to execute, so I can tell you more in the next episode what we may be doing with this coffee. It's unlikely we're going to store it, but who knows. So thanks for watching. Thanks for tagging along for Harvest Year 71. We're now actually done. No fields left. So the question becomes, am I going to get things in the ground tomorrow? Since I don't have to wait for the ground to be 61, I can potentially plant things, but that would turn into an extremely long day as well, so I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to get it all in or not, but more than likely we'll do something. So we'll see you in late autumn.